All right, so welcome back to the Generative AI in the Real World podcast with O'Reilly. And our guest today is Matt Welsh of Aaron AI. Their tagline is Quality ETL for Unstructured Data with only a few lines of code. So welcome to the podcast, Matt.
Thanks, Ben. Nice to be here.
And quick trivia for our listeners. If you go to Matt's Wikipedia page, and I quote, he was portrayed by the actor Brian Palermo in the movie The Social Network because he was Mark Zuckerberg's teacher at Harvard. And then, according to Wikipedia, Matt was paid $200 for his PowerPoint slides, which were used in the movie. So I'm fact-checking Wikipedia in real time, Matt. Are
Yes.
both of these true?
Yeah, so I spent about 8 years as a professor of computer science at Harvard and taught operating systems there. And one of the students that I had in my class, one of the many amazing students I had in my class was Mark Zuckerberg. And this was before he started Facebook, or it was around the same time. I think maybe he started it during the semester that I was teaching. So needless to say, he wasn't in class all that often. He was a bit busy with other things. And, some years later after Facebook had taken off, I'm sitting at my desk at Harvard and I get a phone call, and it was someone calling from Columbia Pictures. And they said, we're doing a movie about Facebook. It's an Aaron Sorkin film. He wants it to be extremely realistic. And so we're looking for lecture notes or slides or something that we can use in this one scene in the film that you might have used during that time period. I said, I'd be more than happy to help with that. And then later on, they said, well, we have to pay you because it's a requirement that we, compensate for your time. And they paid me $200 to use my PowerPoint slides in the Social Network movie.
You should have asked for residuals.
I know, exactly. I really wasn't thinking at the time. I should have had a better lawyer look at that agreement.
All right. So our topic today is, I guess, the changing nature of programming. So I guess you're one of many people. Andrei Karpathy is another who've argued that programming, as we know it, it's over, right? So,
Yeah.
So what will replace programming, and what are programmers doing today, and what will they be doing, let's say, 2 years from now?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, we're in this really interesting time of transition. I mean, first of all, of course, programmers are heavily using AI to help them write code or help them manipulate code, right? So things like Copilot, I use Copilot all day, every day, and couldn't imagine coding without it now. But that's not even what I'm talking about. My view is that ultimately the idea of sitting down and writing a program in a language like Python or TypeScript or Java ultimately gets replaced by telling a language model what you want to do in a natural language like English. And then the language model doesn't generate computer code. It just goes and does the thing directly. So if I ask the language model, look, I want you to go and scan through all of these documents and identify the documents that correspond to certain features that I'm interested in, and then make a report with this information and these tables, and then fetch this information from this third-party site and incorporate that. The language model can just operate as a somewhat autonomous agent and do all of those actions directly. So not first generating computer code and then you run the computer code, but instead just directly doing the computation using the model.
So these are for one-off tasks, right? So, but imagine if your task is to build a pipeline, then maybe you will ask it to write code that you can inspect and look at, right? But even the thing you described, I'm not sure if we're quite there yet, because how do you trust that it's doing the right thing, right? So.
Yeah, so there's an interesting set of, trade-offs and challenges here. So, what I'm personally inspired by is the idea that I can now write programs, and I'm going to use programs with air quotes around them, that do things that I could never imagine doing before. So to give an example, if I have a transcript from this podcast, for example, and I wanted to manipulate that transcript and lift out, say, summaries of the key topics, or find the bios of the speakers, or go and find references to research papers that are relevant to what we're talking about right now. I couldn't write, there's no way to write that as regular computer code, right? There's no algorithm I could write down. There's no Python program I could write that would do all of those things. And so we're already seeing the idea that using a language model as something that you can instruct, and the language model can manipulate and deal with extremely sophisticated, complex information in natural language, is like really opening the aperture of what computing is all about. You know, computing used to be about ones and zeros, and then it became around, numbers in spreadsheets, and then it became around, HTML documents on the web. And now we're opening it up to really be able to perform meaningful computation on really any human-generated content. To me, that is such a huge opportunity. And I think when people ask the question, well, how is AI really going to influence the future of computing? I can't trust it, or it's slow, or it's expensive. I think they might be often missing that really important point, which is there's a whole new field of kinds of computation that we can now do that you could not do before.
And also, what you're describing changes the persona of who does programming, right? So for a long time, people have been talking about digital humanities, but then that turned out to be humanities PhDs learning Python and learning how to write crawlers and things like that. But now, from what you're describing, I can be a humanities PhD student, and I could be doing a lot of things that, computer scientists would be doing in some ways, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think, since, the 1960s, we've seen this pattern emerge where people in fields like medicine or science or law that needed computation, they'd have to go and ask the computer programmers to do the thing for them and to figure out how to do it. Over time, that's become easier. And, just a simple example, Excel as a spreadsheet has opened up computing to vast numbers of people, because anyone who can put something in a spreadsheet can now build simple computations around whatever data happens to be in the spreadsheet. I think we tend not to think of that as programming, but it really is. I mean, we're instructing the computer how to perform operations on our data. We're just not doing it by writing code per se. We're putting in formulas, but that's fine. It's the same thing. But now what we're seeing is kind of an evolution away from having to go hire that expert programmer, computer scientist to translate my idea into reality. And countless people that I've spoken to in fields in the humanities and medicine and law and other places are finding that they can really get something like ChatGPT up and running and doing a lot of this stuff for them directly. It's faster, it's easier, it's a lot more iterative, because you go try to find, say, if you're in a university medical department and you need some custom program to do something, good luck. Who are you going to find to write that? Maybe there's somebody around the corner who knows how to write some Python code, but they're not professionals. Maybe you can find an intern, undergrad, computer science undergrad for the summer, but then they leave after 3 months and you're left with whatever they wrote or didn't write. So we're finding this opportunity where AI models really are able to unblock people in fields that require computation, need to build software, but really just don't have the expertise to do that. And to me, that's a huge opportunity to enable that, because, all of the sciences, for example, have been revolutionized by computing. But there's still a bandwidth problem because the number of people you have that know how to do programming and know how to translate the particular kind of thing that the scientist wants to do into working computer code is very small. It's vanishingly small. And the best people at that go off and work at Facebook and Google, not University of Arizona. So it's very difficult to get good talent in many of these fields, but AI is, I think, going to democratize that very much.
Yeah, I find when I'm writing code, I get by with Copilot or maybe one LLM, one specialized LLM. But when I'm doing kind of analyst information extraction kind of work, I end up using like multiple LLMs in kind of an ensemble way because there's still that kind of trusting, right? So I'm going to go through a bunch of PDF files with this LLM and this LLM and this LLM. Let's see what the consensus kind of emerges.
Right.
Because it's a one-off type of task that I want to get right. So I'm willing to go through that pain. So thanks for listening to this episode of the O'Reilly Podcast, Generative AI in the Real World. If you want to listen to the full version, please log in to the platform at O'Reilly.com.